My legs were burning. That kind of lactic acid fire that tells you your body is shutting down. But your brain is screaming at you to move. The air was thin, smelling of pine needles and damp earth. My father, Paul, was about 50 feet ahead of me, moving with an ease that felt almost insulting. He pointed up a ridge, a rocky spine that looked more like a death trap than a hiking trail. Scout ahead. Sophia. He called back, not even turning his head. Find that viewpoint I told you about. I'll wait here. I adjusted the straps of the pack he'd made me carry. It was heavy, digging into my shoulders. But I didn't complain. I climbed. I scrambled over rocks, pulling myself up by tree roots, my breath coming in ragged gasps. It took me maybe 10 minutes to reach the crest. I turned around, expecting to see him waving, expecting to see the white of his smile. The trail below was empty, just dirt and shadows. "Dad," I called out. My voice sounded small, swallowed instantly by the vastness of the national forest. "Dad?" Silence. I scrambled back down, sliding on loose gravel, my heart hammering against my ribs. The spot where he'd been standing was empty. I ran to the trailhead. Another quarter-mile down. The space where his SUV had been parked was just a patch of disturbed dust settling in the afternoon light. He was gone, and he'd taken the map, the car keys, and the water. Before I tell you what I found when I finally made it back to the road, and the nightmare that was waiting for my father when he got home, drop a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from, and what time it is for you right now. I want to see how far this story travels. I'm Sophia. 15. I stood there for a long time. I don't know how long. Long enough for the dust from his tires to settle back onto the dirt road, coating my boots in a fine, gray film. Long enough for the sun to dip behind the tree line, turning the light from gold to a bruised purple. I didn't scream again. Screaming was for people who believed someone was listening. The silence of a national forest isn't actually silent. It's a living, breathing thing. The wind hissing through the lodgepole pines, the snap of a twig somewhere in the underbrush, the chitter of a squirrel. But right then, it felt like the world had held its breath. It's strange what goes through your mind when you realize the person who gave you life has decided to risk ending it. You don't think about the big things. You think about the small, stupid details. I thought about how he'd told me to pack light because he'd carry the heavy stuff. I thought about how he'd smiled when he handed me the water bottle at the car. A smile that didn't reach his eyes. I sat down on a large rock near the trailhead sign. The wood was weathered, carved with the initials of people who had come here and left safely. People whose fathers hadn't driven away. This wasn't just abandonment. It was a calculation. The forest around me was vast, indifferent, and ancient. There's a specific kind of terror that comes from being alone in the wilderness. It's the fear of the predator. The cold. The dark. But as the shadows stretched out like fingers across the dirt, I realized something that made my blood run colder than the mountain air. The wilderness wasn't cruel. It was just there. A mountain lion doesn't hate you. It's just hungry. A storm doesn't want to hurt you. It's just weather. Nature is honest in its indifference. My father was not honest. He had planned this. He had mapped out the route, calculated the drive time, and chosen this specific, dead zone spot where the cell towers couldn't reach. He had looked at the weather forecast to ensure it would be cold enough to scare me, but maybe hopefully not cold enough to kill me. Or maybe he didn't care either way. That specific, curated malice was infinitely more terrifying than the bears or the wolves. The animals just wanted to survive. My father wanted to erase me. I pulled my backpack off my shoulders. It felt lighter than it should have. I unzipped the main compartment. A half-empty water bottle. A rain jacket. A flashlight with batteries that rattled. Sounding loose. No food. He'd kept the food in his pack. To balance the weight, he'd said. Panic tried to claw its way up my throat. Hot and acidic. I squeezed my eyes shut. Don't you dare. I told myself. Do not give him the satisfaction of your tears. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of pine resin and dust. I needed to think like Grandma Eleanor. What would she do? She wouldn't cry. She would assess her assets. I ran my fingers along the bottom seam of the backpack's inner lining. I felt it a hard, rectangular lump. Grandma hadn't trusted him. Not for a second. Before I left, she'd pulled me into her study, her face stern, and handed me a heavy, rubberized brick. It's a satellite phone, she'd said. Fully charged. Emergency beacon included. Sew it into the bag. Tell no one. At the time, I thought she was being paranoid. I thought she was just trying to ruin my chance to finally bond with my dad. Now, I ripped the stitching open with my house key. The phone fell into my lap. Black and rugged. I pressed the power button. The screen glowed to life. A bright green artificial eye in the gathering dusk. Searching for signal. 1 bar. 2 bars. I didn't call 911. I didn't call my mom. I dialed the only number that mattered. It rang once. Sophia, Grandma's voice was sharp. Immediate. He left me. I said. My voice didn't shake. I'm at the trailhead. He took the car. I'm tracking your signal, she said. Stay put. The extraction team is already in the air. I looked up at the sky, watching the first stars blink into existence above the tree line. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was a survivor. And the war had just begun. The temperature dropped fast. It wasn't a gradual cooling. It was a sudden, biting chill that seemed to seep up from the ground itself. I pulled my knees to my chest, trying to conserve heat, and stared at the empty trail where my father had vanished. A normal person would ask, why did you go with him? Why did you get in the car? But the people asking those questions have never been a 15-year-old girl living in a house where affection is a currency you have to earn. And the exchange rate changes every day. I didn't follow him up that mountain because I was stupid. I didn't carry a 50-pound pack while he carried nothing because I was naive. I did it because I had been trained to believe that my value as a human being was directly tied to my utility. It started with Vanessa, my stepmother. She didn't yell. Yelling leaves echoes. She preferred the quiet, slicing comment delivered with a smile. Sophia, try not to be such dead weight today, she'd say when we were packing for a trip. We have enough baggage without you adding to it. She made it clear I was an overhead cost, a line item that provided no return on investment. And my father, he didn't defend me. He capitalized on it. I closed my eyes, and the memory of the conversation that started this whole nightmare played out against the back of my eyelids. It was 3 days ago. We were in the kitchen. The stainless steel appliances were gleaming, cold and sterile. We're going on a trip, Paul had said. Just us. No Vanessa. No kids. A real hike. Deep woods. I had hesitated. I remembered the last bonding trip, where I ended up babysitting Olivia and Mason while he drank scotch by the pool. He saw the hesitation. He leaned in, his voice dropping to that conspiratorial tone that always made me feel special. Even though I knew it was a trap. This is your chance, Sophia, he said. Show me you're not weak like your mother. Show me you can pull your own weight. Carry the gear. Navigate the trail. Prove you belong in this family. Prove you belong. That was the hook. That was the trap. The trap of normalized cruelty. I believed that if I could just carry enough, suffer enough, and work hard enough, I could buy my way into his heart. I believed that love was a transaction. If I provided labor, physical, emotional, silent labor, he would provide protection. So I took the heavy pack. I didn't check it because I trusted him to pack the essentials. I didn't complain about the weight because the weight was the point. The weight was my offering. Look, Dad. Look how strong I am. Look how useful I am. Please don't throw me away. I looked at the backpack sitting in the dirt next to me. I unzipped the main pocket again. The flashlight. The rain jacket. It hit me then. A realization so sharp, it felt like a physical blow. There was no camping gear. No tent. No sleeping bags. No food for a multi-day trek. He never intended to hike. He never intended to camp with me. The heavy pack wasn't full of supplies. It was just full of weight. Old towels. Rocks, wrapped in newspaper to give it bulk. He had loaded me down like a pack mule, not because we needed the supplies, but to slow me down. To exhaust me. To make sure that when he told me to scout ahead, I would be too tired to question him. Too focused on the physical task to see the betrayal coming. He had leveraged my desperate need to be useful to lead me into my own disposal. I wasn't a daughter to him. I was an obstacle he needed to drive into the woods and leave behind so he could go enjoy his real life. The sadness I had been holding back evaporated. In its place, something hot and hard began to form. It was the death of hope. And the birth of a cold, diamond-hard rage. He wanted me to prove I wasn't weak. Fine. I checked the satellite phone again. 3 bars. The extraction team was 18 minutes out. I wasn't weak. And I was done paying for a love that didn't exist. 2 black SUVs with tinted windows rolled up the dirt road, their tires crunching over the gravel that had been my only company for the last hour. A man got out of the lead vehicle. He wore a tactical vest over a suit, looking less like a ranger and more like a Secret Service agent. Miss Sophia, he asked. I'm Mr. Vance. Your grandmother sent us. I nodded, unable to speak. My throat felt like it was coated in sandpaper. He opened the back door of the SUV. The interior smelled of leather and expensive climate control. It was warm, a stark, artificial warmth that made me shiver violently as the adrenaline finally crashed. I climbed in. As we descended the mountain, the bars on my phone flickered back to life. LTE. 5 grams. The digital world came rushing back. Indifferent to the fact that I had almost just become a statistic. My thumb hovered over the Instagram icon. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew it would hurt. But I needed to know. I needed to see the architecture of my own disposal. I opened the app. Paul's story was the first bubble at the top of the feed. I tapped it. Photo 1. A panoramic shot of a sunset over a valley. But not from a trail. From a deck. A teak deck, with a fire pit. Tagged location, the Summit Luxury Glamping Resort. Photo 2. Vanessa holding a flute of champagne. Laughing. Her head thrown back. She was wearing a cashmere wrap. Looking cozy and rich. Photo 3. Olivia and Mason roasting marshmallows over a gas fire pit. They looked clean. Happy. Photo 4. A selfie of my father. Ideally lit by the firelight. He was holding a glass of scotch. Smiling, that charming, confident smile that had fooled everyone. Including me. The caption read, "Finally some peace and quiet in nature." Resetting with the crew. Peace and quiet. He wasn't lost. He wasn't looking for me. He wasn't even hiking. While I was shivering in the dirt, wondering if I would freeze, he was 20 miles away, drinking scotch and toasting to his freedom from the baggage. He hadn't just left me, he had erased me to upgrade his vacation. I felt a coldness settle in my chest that had nothing to do with the mountain air. It was the death of the girl who just wanted her dad to like her. I exited Instagram and opened my messages. I typed 3 words. A trap. Where are you? The 3 dots appeared immediately. He was holding his phone. He was probably looking at it right now. Annoyed that his peace and quiet was interrupting him. The message came through a moment later. Stop the drama. Sophia. You wanted to be independent. Figure it out. Consider this a lesson in resilience. Find your own way back. I stared at the screen. Find your own way back. He didn't know I was in an armored SUV, paid for by the woman he hated most in the world. He thought I was still on the mountain. Or maybe walking down a dark highway. He didn't care. To him, this was a game. A power move. He was teaching the dog to stay outside so he could enjoy dinner. I took a screenshot. Then another. I saved them to the cloud. Mr. Vance. I said. My voice steady. Yes. Miss. How far is the Summit Resort from here? He glanced at the GPS. About 40 minutes. Good. I said. Take me to Grandma's first. We have some paperwork to do. I looked out the window at the passing trees. They didn't look scary anymore. They looked like witnesses. My father wanted me to learn a lesson. I learned it. I learned that he was a monster. And monsters don't get to live in castles. They get evicted. The iron gates of the Blackwood estate didn't just open. They parted like the Red Sea. Mr. Vance drove us up the winding driveway. Past manicured lawns that looked like they had been cut with nail scissors. I had been here before. For stiff holiday dinners where my father spent the entire time trying to impress Grandma Eleanor and failing. But tonight, it felt different. It felt like a fortress. When the SUV stopped, the front door was already open. Grandma Eleanor stood on the top step. She wasn't wearing a shawl or looking like a worried grandmother. She was wearing a structured blazer and holding a glass of iced tea that wasn't sweating. She looked like a general surveying a battlefield. I climbed out, conscious of the dirt on my face, the pine needles in my hair, the smell of fear sweat that still clung to me. She didn't rush to hug me. She walked down the steps, her cane tapping a steady rhythm on the stone. She stopped in front of me, reached out a hand, and lifted my chin. Her eyes were sharp, scanning me for injuries. Did he hit you? She asked. No, I croaked. He just left me. Good. Physical wounds heal too fast. This gives us leverage, Eleanor said before leading me into the library, where her team was waiting. She gestured for me to sit. Sophia. Do you know who owns the mountain cabin your father lives in? Yes, he does. He bought it 3 years ago. Eleanor gave a sharp laugh. He hasn't bought anything since 2008. The cabin belongs to the Blackwood Family Trust, a subtrust created for your protection. I stared. Mine. He was allowed to stay there only as a caretaker, she said. Housing and a stipend, in exchange for keeping you safe. An agreement he broke the moment he abandoned you in the woods. Ms. Sterling read the clause confirming his residency could be revoked immediately for any act of endangerment. Eleanor picked up her phone. He thinks he's glamping until Sunday. We have 48 hours to remove him. To evict him, I asked. To erase him. She ordered the locks changed. His belongings placed on the lawn. And his stepfamily's things left at the driveway as trespassers. When we arrived at the cabin, my cabinet team was already emptying it with icy precision. Inside. Ms. Sterling worked at a laptop until she finally called us over. On the screen was a custodial account created for my education. It should have held over $500,000. Instead, 3 days earlier, $450,000 had been wired to an offshore company controlled by Vanessa. My forged signature authorized it. The truth hit like a blow. Paul hadn't taken me into the forest out of anger. He had taken me there to eliminate the only person who could expose the theft. Eleanor's expression hardened. This isn't just eviction anymore. Get the district attorney. We have wire fraud, identity theft, and grand larceny. That night, the cabin sat empty while his belongings lay under tarps on the lawn. When his luxury RV arrived, the gate code failed. He climbed the wall, shouting for me until he saw the stripped house. The trust evicted you, I said. Police stepped forward. His attempt to lie collapsed when they played his voicemail telling me to find my own way back. He was arrested on the spot. Vanessa never stepped out of the RV. She simply reversed down the drive and left him behind. In the months that followed, federal charges moved quickly. Paul was sentenced to 15 years. Vanessa filed for divorce, while investigators combed through the offshore records. I moved in with Eleanor. For the first time, I lived somewhere safe. 6 months later, I returned to the mountains, this time with proper gear. Standing at the summit, I finally understood the narrow line between survival and disappearance. If Eleanor hadn't insisted on the satellite phone, I might never have come home. My father stole my money, my safety, and nearly my life. But he underestimated the one thing he couldn't erase, that I was never the dependent in his story. I was the beneficiary and the survivor. I breathed in the cold mountain air and felt the truth settle. I wasn't just the girl left in the woods. I was the girl who walked out and reclaimed everything.